Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Loser's Breakfast. Mornings with Mancuso, uh, whatever we might want to call it. I don't know. Maybe we'll switch to the mornings. We'll do like 1 minute every morning, Mancuso morning minutes, which turns into five, but it'll still be less than the 28 that, or 25, whatever it is that Alasso wants me to do. Um, so this is our weekly exploration in excellence, albeit a day later. Well, not quite, maybe 20 hours later. Thanks for joining. I know we got a bunch of people at the 2020. I know it's early for some. It's 5 o'clock in the morning for those on the West Coast. Most of our viewers watch this on replay anyway, so not like it would be that uncommon to not watch live in the first place. So, let's get right to it. I'm just going to throw this out there, and I know that this is going to be maybe an odd statement to make, being that the 10-year is up 3 basis points in pre-market. We're up about 15, 18 basis points from the low that we, hit last week from recent highs, but rates are never going up. And I'm just going to keep saying that, and more on that in a minute. But so what's happening this week? We got a bunch of auctions, and I really like to see where the market perceives things when you're kind of in the middle of the range during an auction. Didn't love yesterday's auction, if I'm being totally honest. Durables, which can be a volatile number yesterday, generally speaking, beat. Pending home sales beat a little bit, which, I don't think that much of a surprise. What I'm hearing more and more, and you know this already because you folks are generally speaking the source of this information when we're talking, is that surprise listing agents are actually calling back buyers agents. People are moving. There's negotiations. Houses are hitting the market a bit with a bit more frequency. So it's also not a surprise when you look at last week's mortgage MBA purchase app number, that it was actually up, and up significantly for the last 2 weeks. We started to bang around 2018 lows. Now we're back to what historically is a pretty reasonable number at an index of 250, 260. That seems to be the number that you get when you're either in an okay to actually like a pretty decent market. Anything more than that's like a really big number. Today we're getting nothing at 8:30, by the way, but Case-Shiller, that'll be interesting. We'll want to see that. We'll want to see home prices. Richmond Fed at 10, consumer confidence at 10. That's one that I don't expect a beat on. These, whether you talk about sentiment or confidence, those numbers have been weakening. Mortgage apps on Wednesday, again, we're talking about the ones that just published last Wednesday. GDP final. Really, the only significance of this GDP number on Wednesday is really that it marks us being roughly 30 days away from the first print of Q2. Boy, that's going to be an interesting one, and really looking forward to that. Thursday, we got Dallas Fed. We got PCE. To me, this is really the inflation number that I want to look at. That combined with ISM prices, which are going to hit on Friday, and I would imagine Tuesday. We'll look at next week because Monday's, of course, the holiday. We never cared about CPI. We touched on that last week. I'm going to revisit that this week. So really looking forward to CPI on Thursday, jobless claims, of course. And then on Friday, we got an early close on the bond market, but not before ISM manufacturing. And I just really can't wait for this number. Last month was 56. We're forecasting 54.9. Frankly, if we come in at 55 and a half, it's significant for me because it's another month-over-month decrease. And to me, any number that prints that's a decrease over last month continues a downtrend. Now, God forbid we print 52, 53. I mean, now we're getting close, okay, to shrinking. Anything under 50 is deflationary or recessionary, whatever you might want to call it. Depends on price component, depends on headline component. Now, of course, the price paid component still going to be a huge number. We're forecasting 81, crazy number on a historical basis. But if we come in at 81 or lower, again, another month of dropping. So what I keep reinforcing is the Fed fighting ghosts? You know, are we already in a recession? Has inflation already peaked? And we're going to talk a lot about inflation here today because, like, I'm on a mission about this inflation conversation because why rhyme there? Because I don't know that anybody really knows what they're looking at. And I think that if you have an MBA, I almost think that you're worse off than a layperson, trying to dissect this. And we'll talk about that again in a minute. Next week, of course, Monday, 4th of July, we got some durables on Tuesday. ISM services, non-manufacturing on Wednesday. I think this is the second straight month, by the way. ADP on Thursday. God knows why we can't print that on Wednesday. I mean, just because we're off on Monday. I mean, do we need 2 days to? Boy, people overthink things like you can't imagine sometimes. And then, of course, non-farm payroll on Friday. And consumer credit, by the way, 3 o'clock after everybody, all the traders are drunk on gin and tonics and half out in the Hamptons, by the way. Not that anybody's going to probably work on Wall Street next week anyway, but we'll bury that consumer credit number. I got to tell you something, a number that I generally don't look at. I think it's going to be an important one just because it'll be an indication of or I shouldn't say an indication. It'll be supportive of some of the other indicators of where the consumer is at and what we're looking at. We went from a period of sort of a bit of a savings boom, if you will, to now we're clearly getting into a bit of a credit boom. Why is that? One of my principles of why rates are never going up is because spending for the last 2-3 decades has absolutely nothing to do with earned income. It's all about inheritance, stocks, housing appreciation, PPP loans, stimulus, things that are transitory in nature. And that's why when people want to shit on this inflation being transitory, and it depends on what you're, I mean, sure, it's not a 1-month thing, but where this is not a multi-year, decade-long problem, in my opinion, unless there's a couple weird things with, Russia just bombed the mall. I mean, that's problematic. Okay. We could have some, some long-term supply chain issues, which has nothing to do with the normal course of business, how people earn and spend, that could stretch inflation out a bit. But that being said, that's why this stuff never lingers, is because once the money runs out, the spending stops. So last week, data wasn't great, okay? Existing home sales missed and was negative. Powell and other Fed folks have been somewhat dovish in their comments. Jobless claims missed, meaning worse. Continuing claims were on the mark. Market PMI, big miss. I mean, I want to say big miss. 53.5 came in at 51.6. Manufacturing PMI, almost 4 points miss. KC Fed last month was 19, this month -1. I mean, I don't know what to say about that. Building permits month over month down 7%. And by the way, the inflation estimates, and I don't even know what that means. I mean, inflation sentiment. I think I feel, but whatever. Actually helped us on Friday. That was a miss. New home sales beat. So, had breakfast with a former Goldman Sachs guy on Sunday, and we both were pretty aligned with this idea that the Fed is fighting ghosts right now. Now, last week or the week before, when Frankie Wholesale was on, we talked about how CPI, first of all, is not a great indicator. Second of all, tends to lag what are real price indicators. He seems to think that we're going to have a miss in July. My number was more August. I want to talk for a minute, and I forget if we touched on this, but the difference between percentages and numbers, the difference between feel and real, perception and reality. So when we talk about inflation, what you're not going to get an argument from me on is that prices have likely changed forever on certain items, okay? Whatever that might be. The cost of this guitar pick, for example, and being that it was 8 o'clock in the morning, I didn't play the guitar. Next week, we'll bring it back. But the price of this guitar pick may have forever changed. It used to be $1, whatever the hell it is, and now it's $1.20, and it's just never going to go down. The plastic that they use for this, there's been such a major supply chain disruption. They're never going to get caught up. This is forever more expensive, and that stinks, okay? That's not what we trade on in the financial markets, generally speaking. The same way, and I use the example of the computer. My first computer was $3-4 grand. My first printer was like $2 grand. Okay. The whole setup was like $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. All right. You can't see this, but I have something like a 48 or 50 inch curved monitor here that on Amazon was like $1,100. So expensive, but I mean, ridiculously cheap in the enormity of the universe of computing, the history of computing. I've got a Microsoft Surface that I use that was like, I don't know, $1,300. So not only is it a computer and a pretty powerful one, but I could take it wherever I go. And what else is in the setup? An HP wireless printer that was like $300. Okay. I mean, the whole shooting match is like $3 grand. And that's an extravagant one. I mean, a monitor that's 3 times the size of the TV that I grew up with. All I need really is this Surface, and you can get like a Chromebook for $300. So, if talking about inflation is a tricky thing. If my measure of inflation was computing power, computing size, there's massive disinflation, deflate, massive. So what's tricky about measuring inflation is, what are you measuring? How are you measuring it? And are you measuring it in real dollars or in percentages? So as the next 12 months unfold, it'll be almost impossible. And you have kind of like, and I wish we had a stamp here. Jenna, this is like the Mancuso 99% guarantee. Boom, stamp it on the screen. Okay. That the inflation numbers are going to get better to the point where I believe it's almost impossible that we don't print a negative number at some point, and possibly sooner than you think. Yet, at that moment in time, when we print a negative number, things may be, very nice, thank you, Mark. Things may be significantly more expensive than we're used to them being. But Michael Burry, so you may know him from The Big Short, one of the most famous economic prognosticators. People said he was crazy, ended up being right. Just read an article, and guess what he said? He said the same thing that I said a few episodes ago. The Fed will not get to all of their rate hikes, which, by the way, we've already priced in. So imagine the rally that's potentially coming in the bond market when all these folks who are crying wolf get caught offside. Could be like a 2020 sort of rally, okay? And not only are they not going to get to the amount of hikes that have been prescribed, but they're going to cut rates. I'd say I agree, but I'd also say, as we say on the internet, first, been saying it. This is how supply and demand works. And there's some saying that, it comes in on a turtle and leaves on a horse, like good economies, something like that, and and I've made a point, and we've talked about this in terms of consulting your borrowers, your home buyers, if you're a realtor, about what interest rates are going to do. And by the way, this guy from Goldman Sachs, it's funny, we're talking about, he's like, if you have an MBA in economics, and why does the Fed keep missing this, keep missing the boat? It's because they just don't look at human beings. 10, 12 months ago, I go to the Millennium Mall. There's a line out the door, and I don't mean the Gucci door. I mean the mall door at the Gucci store. 2 weeks ago, nobody there. You could print whatever fucking data you want to print. My eyes don't deceive me. Week after week, month after month, there was a line out the door. There is no line. I don't need numbers to tell me that business isn't as good. The business that most of us are in who are watching or participating in this right now, home ownership, week after week, month after month, can't get into a house, can't get into a listing, bidding wars, pocket sales, all of this. All of a sudden, I'm being told all over, listing agents are calling back buyer's agents. I don't need a number. I don't care what any of these housing numbers come out at in the next 30 days to know that the ground is shifting under our feet. So here's what we say. Right now, I have a lock bias. Okay, we're certainly again bumping up to the higher end of that range. Last week we had a float bias, and if you had floated on Monday and Tuesday and then locked towards the end of the week as we got down towards the lower end of the range, you did well at 320 something. Okay. Hard for me to want to lock, especially 60, 90, 120 day locks. Right now I'm on float bias, but I'm day to day. I'm borrower to borrower. Folks have been saying more and more, marry the house, date the rate. Look, there's nobody that's getting a mortgage right now that is not going to refinance in the next 24 months, period. And likely in the next 12. So, don't overthink this ham sandwich, as we like to say at EPM. And I don't know. I think it's going to get ugly. And let's hope I'm wrong about that. But the way prices escalate and deflate is generally in an irrational way. And I think it was Greenspan who coined this phrase, irrational exuberance. And we call it FOMO now in the the internet world. I don't want to miss out on this house, this watch, this car. It's going to be more expensive tomorrow, so I got to get it today. Well, I hate to tell you, folks, it works in the opposite. You need one house to sell for less than the last house. You need one house to sit on the market 3 times as long as the last house did. And then 6 months later, you wake up with a black eye, really realizing that prices are 20% less. So if I was a branch manager, if I was a sales manager, if I was a loan officer in the mortgage business, I would be dotting my I's, crossing my T's, getting my tickler file out, getting ready, circling back with borrowers, trying to figure out the strike point. Hey, I have a feeling, if we get here, do you want me to call you? That's what I have done in the past. So I know it works based on that experience. That's what I would be doing now. The other thing that I think that we need to continue to double down on, as we just got news, and I don't know all the details here, but it was on the internet, so it must be true. But this first guarantee thing, oh my God, basically closing down. I don't know the details behind it. Obviously, they laid off a massive amount of people. Word seems to be that they're shuttering. PIMCO pulled the plug. By the way, if that concept, I think we could venture to guess that PIMCO's not short on money. So this idea of how market participants and how humans can tend to overreact. I would argue that if you were going to close a mortgage company, you should have done that 6 months ago, not today. Arguably our most difficult days are now behind us. But Jesus, 2 years of running like hell, you can't survive 6 months? I don't know. Feel bad for those folks. I don't know the exact details. Just know that everybody keeps saying that they've basically just kept enough people to wind down their pipeline, clear the books, clear the decks. I know some of those folks, feel bad for them. But boy, to me, this is an example of continuing to work on building your business. There's going to be and there has been a lot of negative conversation, a lot of woe is me. And, I think in most markets, the strong shall survive. You've got to be a beacon of strength in this market. And, consequently, it's making the calls you don't want to make, following up incessantly, visiting, pounding the pavement virtually and literally, and playing the long game and setting up for what your business is going to look like next month and the month after and the month after that. And so, for me, the next 60, 90 days, I'm focusing on closing every single loan that I have, and establishing the referral relationships when we turn the corner, and creating the tickler files for when I start to refi my book of business. Don't anybody plan vacations in December. I have this sense this year is sort of, for me, building up to have a very 2011, 2014 feel, where it seemed like November and December were real turning points for us. So don't plan on taking December off. I remember back in 11, it was pre-EPM. We had started a business in the summer and just exploded in December. December, January, February, awesome months. And if you remember, rates were tough in 10. That was the last time we kind of visited sixes. And summer of 10, things started to unstick themselves. And then boom, December 11 was an awesome, awesome month. And it probably was, maybe would have happened even a little bit sooner. Maybe it was the reason why it was December was because we had just been starting our business. But then obviously we were off to the races in 12. These cycles are happening much quicker. You know, the efficiency of a market. And this is something that I really want to leave you with. And it transcends the markets or our individual and or collective businesses. When you talk about capitalism, the first thing, or one of the first things that comes to mind for me, is efficiency. And you hear the word all the time, or the phrase all the time, efficient markets, right? And one of the things we've been seeing in the bond market is inefficiency. When you have 10, 20, 30 tick spreads, it's ridiculous. But capitalism tends to lend itself to the pursuit of efficiency. And so how do we find ourselves right now, 3-4 weeks removed from like the craziest housing market ever? And now we're talking about lower prices, a hiccup, a stutter, a gully, to make the Michael Berry reference. They kept saying the big joke, oh, just a little gully. And think about that. And think about how stupid we are that we continue to allow ourselves to repeat history. And only after it's too late, and the benefit of hindsight, well, oh, I saw that. Yeah, you know, those signs were there. Think about what we were saying in 2008. Oh, it's just a gully. It's just a gully. So you look at it, and in this pursuit of efficiency, there are times that we don't see the inefficiencies, okay? Or that we don't recognize the real efficiency that exists. And so in housing, let's talk about it for a second. 1928, whatever the hell the year is, 1952. You have a localized gully. We're up in Boston, Massachusetts, Methuen, where we have an office, right? And all of a sudden, people on the streets are realizing that the housing market is slowing down. And I'm here in Florida, okay? Well, God, I'm not going to hear about this for weeks, for months. Maybe I don't read newspapers. Maybe it takes a long time to get to the newspaper. By the time I read the newspaper, it's too late. You know, the local newspaper is running with the story, but everybody, you know, the New York Times is saying, you guys are crazy. So they're not running with the story. Well, by the time the Florida market softens, the writing has been on the wall for weeks, for months, but I can't see it because the market's not efficient. The transference of knowledge, data, information is inefficient. That world largely no longer exists. Information and automation are price and wage killers. Again, another principle of why I say rates are never going up. Well, we get information and data so quickly. It's in the palm of our hands. All I need is for one realtor, in this example in Methuen, to do this. Holy shit, a listing agent called me back today. Holy cow, I have the nicest house that I've put on the market in the last 2 years, and it's been 3 weeks and we don't have an offer. My goodness, I sold a house 2 weeks ago and had 5 offers in the first hour. We've been on the market for 4 days and I don't have an offer yet. Or I have 2 and they're both under listing. And here's the irony of this scenario. If I am on Twitter here in Florida But you, 5 miles out of, Methuen, are not, okay? Unlike back in the day where everyone religiously got their little local paper and ran out there because that's what we did. Now, you may be preoccupied consuming doing TikToks. I actually get that data before you do. Now, we tie this back to FOMO, and I say, oh my God, I better sell my house now. Or I'm a buyer, oh my God, something's happening. And that's why our booms and our busts are bigger and come faster. The writing is still on the wall. We're just too busy, too blind, too crazy, too stupid, too preoccupied to see it. And I'd venture to guess sometimes we're too afraid to say it. But we're not here on Loser's Lunch because we're willing to be wrong. We're willing to bat 350. 8:31. I'd read the data from 8:30, but there was none today. So, folks, we'll have a guest next week. I promise. Crush it for the rest of the week. Bond market closes at 2. We're closed on Monday. Oh, my gosh, I got to think about that. We're probably going to come to you on Tuesday, by the way, next week. So, probably won't be Monday. I probably won't be able to get a guest. We'll be shooting off fireworks and eating hamburgers. But as always, thank you. For those of you that I'll see Wednesday night at the 2020, I hope you continue to have a great conference there. Crush it.